Amex points are some of the most valuable in the game, but not every way to redeem them gives you the same bang for your buck. Today, I'm breaking down every single way you could use your Amex membership reward points. Some redemptions are surprisingly weak, while others can unlock huge travel value if you know where to look. So if you've ever wondered whether you're using your points the smartest way, this video is for you. And let's kick things off with the most basic option, cash back. But with Amex, it's not as simple as it sounds. So when you hear cash back, you'd expect something straightforward, right? But Amex, of course, they make it complicated. They don't let you just redeem points for cash like Chase or Capital One do. Instead, there are 5 different workarounds, each with slightly different rules and values. Let's start with the most familiar. The first is covering your charges. You could use Amex points to cover recent charges on your Amex credit cards. Super easy, you just pick the eligible charges you want to wipe out and Amex applies a statement credit. Using my Amex Gold card as an example, you could see some of the recent transactions that I could use Amex points to cover those purchases for. As you might imagine, a lot of the transactions are grocery or restaurant related. All you need to do is to select the transactions that you want to use points to cover for, and in your upcoming statement, you'll receive credit for all of the transactions that you want to use Amex points for. Yes, this is a very simple and straightforward way to redeem your Amex points, but you might wonder, how much value do you get from this redemption method? Well, you only get 0.6 cents per point. That's a weak value. The second way to receive cash back is statement credits. And instead of choosing specific charges, you could redeem points as a lump sum credit to your account. The same 0.6 cents per point value. It's slightly faster than the first option, but it's the same very mediocre value. The third way to use your Amex points for cash back is to pay with points at checkout. This one's a little bit better. If you shop at places like Amazon, Best Buy, or use PayPal, you'll see the option to pay with your Amex points directly. It does depend on the websites or company that you're buying from, because not every store or website has this option at checkout. But if you can pay with points at checkout, you usually get on average around 0.7 cents per point, depending on the retailer. Still not amazing, but better than the first two. The fourth option is gift cards. American Express has a set list of gift cards that you could choose from to redeem your points with. There are dozens of different companies and retailers to choose from, but be careful because not every single one will give you the same value. For example, I will show you 3 different options, each with a very different redemption value. The first one is if you were to redeem your points for an Amex gift card. These Amex gift cards can be used like a debit card, which means they could be used for pretty much anything that takes American Express credit cards. It's a very flexible and easy to use gift card, which also means the redemption value of it is low. Specifically, you will get 0.5 cents per point worth of value. It doesn't matter which denomination you use. You don't even get a discount for redeeming more points for a higher gift card value. It's just a fixed value. Another gift card you could get is from Apple, and with this retailer, you would receive a value right now of 0.85 cents per point. So far, that's better than the 0.5 cents or 0.6 cents or 0.7 cents that we have seen from the other redemption options from Amex so far. Then the last example for the gift card option is from a brand called Athleta, which will actually give you a 1 cent per point redemption value. I will say that American Express does occasionally have gift cards on sale where you can see redemption values of around 1.2 cents per point. So if you did want to redeem your Amex points for gift cards, I would suggest waiting until they go on sale and maybe stockpiling on them if you know you're going to use those gift cards in the near future. Then the last and final cashback option, which is actually cashback, is to use the Charles Schwab workaround. Now here's the only true cashback option, as I just mentioned, but it's hidden behind a paywall. In order for this to work, you will need the $695 annual fee Amex Platinum Charles Schwab version. This lets you redeem your points as cash into a Charles Schwab account at 1.1 cents per point value, which is good for up to 1 million points per calendar year. After you redeem 1 million points using this method, it drops down to a value of 0.8 cents per point, which is still better than the other cashback options that Amex Amex provides. This is a solid route, but unless you're already justifying that high $700 annual fee, it's a big commitment just to unlock the feature to get cash back. It really is a huge bummer that American Express makes you jump through this hoop and apply for their most expensive credit card in order to have the ability to transfer your points to cash back at a worthwhile value. Now let's talk travel redemptions, because this is where things start to get interesting or frustrating. Let's start with redeeming your Amex points through the Amex Travel portal, because there's something a little bit sneaky about how Amex handles this. Let me start with the most straightforward and basic example. If you want to redeem your Amex points for flights through the American Express travel portal, you could do so at a 1 cent per point value. It doesn't matter if it's a domestic flight, it doesn't matter if it's an international, it doesn't matter if it's economy, business, or first class. All flight redemptions through the Amex travel portal are worth 1 cent per point. Here's an example. This LAX to Paris first class flights, boom, 1 cent per point value. The same goes for LAX to Paris in business class, 1 cent per point value. And if you want to fly within the United States from LAX to New York City in an economy, it's still a 1 cent per point value. And if you were to do the same routes except in first class, it is also, surprise, surprise, a 1 cent per point value. It doesn't matter what airline you take or what route you take or what seat you get, it's always going to be 1 cent per point redemption value if you redeem for flights through the American Express travel portal. Of course, you have to be mindful that the prices through the Amex travel portal for the flights might be more expensive than booking directly, so you'll have to take that into account and do a little bit of research if you want to get the best price. But redeeming Amex points through the travel portal for flights is the easy route, because if you try and redeem points through the travel portal for hotels, you're going to have slightly more trouble with that, because this is where Amex gets shady. To start things off, I want to show you what things will look like if you book a fine hotels and resort property using your points through the Amex travel portal. I will be using the Conrad Los Angeles for an example. The total cost for a one-night stay at this hotel in cash would be $476.90. However, the amount that we would owe today is $433.58, which we could use Amex points to cover at a 1 cent per point ratio. That's because the other $43.32 in fees, we cannot use our Amex points to cover because it is due at the hotel when we check in. That $43 we would have to pay whether we pay in cash or with points, so it doesn't really matter. But what all of this means is that in order to cover this hotel trip, we would need 43,358 Amex points, which, like I mentioned earlier, is a 1 cent per point value. Even if you choose to pay some of the amount due today with points and the rest with cash, it would still be a 1 cent per point ratio. As you can see here, I entered that I would use 20,000 Amex points right now, and that will cover $200 off of the total hotel cost, a 1 cent per point value. But here is where things get interesting, because as soon as we try booking a hotel collection property or a regular hotel that isn't in the Fine Hotels and Resorts program or the Hotel Collection program, we see a different cent per point value for our Amex points. And personally, I am not okay with this, because I think it should just all be the same value no matter what hotel you book. This is an example of Amex doing some dirty rat behavior. But to prove this point to you, I have two examples with two different hotels. The first is the Alohilani, which is a hotel collection hotel. And the other hotel is this random hotel I found called the Fairmont Century Hotel, which is not in the hotel collection and not in the Fine Hotels and Resorts collection. If we look at both of these hotels and how many points it takes to redeem for a stay, you will see that the redemption value we get is 0.7 cents per point. The Fairmont Hotel requires us to pay $680, or we could use 97,000 Amex points. That's a 0.7 cent per point value. The same goes for a hotel collection property. The Alohilani would charge us $790 or 113,000 Amex points. Once again, a 0.7 cents per point value. I just want to remind you that most other banks, or pretty much I think every other bank that offers redemption options by booking through their respective travel portals, give you at least 1 cent per point for any flight or hotel purchase. but not with American Express. However, before I move on to the last redemption option and more examples, I want to give another tip on how to receive more value from flight redemptions specifically made with your Amex points. If you like using your Amex points to book flights, there is a way or a workaround to receive a fixed 1.54 cents per point value as opposed to the normal 1 cent per point value. Once again, though, American Express is trying to squeeze out as much money as they can from you. So in order to unlock this special benefits, you need to have the American Express Business Platinum credit card. With this credit card, you have a 35% points rebate when you book a first or business class flight on any airline, or if you book a flight with the selected qualifying airline that you choose through the Amex Travel portal. To clarify, let me just say that one more time. You have to book through the American Express travel portal. And if you book a first class flight or a business class flight on any airline, you will be eligible to receive 35% of your points back. Or if you book any seats, that could be economy, first class, or business class on the one airline that you select at the beginning of the year, you will also receive 35% of your points back. So for example, if you choose United Airlines as your selected qualifying airlines and you book any United flights through the Amex Travel portal with American Express points, you will receive 35% of those points back. This benefit is only good on up to 1 million points per calendar year, and after you do all of the math with the redemptions and the rebates, you're basically getting a fixed 1.54 cents per point redemption on those flight purchases. You also have the option to either pay the flight entirely with points or purchase only part of the flight with points. Both options will give you the 35% rebate. But once again, you need to have the $695 Amex Business Platinum card in order to be eligible for this benefit. Without this Amex Business Platinum card, I think redeeming your Amex points for travel through the Amex Travel portal is only really worth it for most people if you're booking fine hotels and resorts properties or if you're booking flights. But if you want to use Amex points to book hotels that are not in the fine hotels and resorts collection, then the next redemption method will be your better option. The last way to redeem your Amex points is to transfer them to a travel partner. And I'm going to show you a handful of different examples on how to get the most value out of this redemption option. To kick things off, I'll be showing you 4 different flight examples with how you could redeem your Amex points. The first example will give you a decent value if you want to go to Paris. I found a first class flight from LAX to Paris for 375,000 Delta miles or a cash price of $6,603. Also, just a little reminder that the flights that I'll be going over are for one way. It is not a round trip flight. If you booked that flight to Paris with points, you would have $6 in taxes and fees, which means your total cent per point value for this redemption would be 1.76. However, if you wanted to go to London instead, I found an even better redemption value. A Delta One first class flight from LAX to London would cost the same 375,000 Delta miles or $10,300 cash. Once again, taking out the $6 in tax and fees, this will give you a 2.76 cent per point value. Next, if you wanted to book a domestic flight, I did find a semi-decent redemption by going through another one of American Express's transfer partners, Virgin Atlantic. Through Virgin Atlantic, I found a one-way economy flight from LAX to Seattle for 11,000 points and $6 in taxes and fees. Keep in mind that although we are using Virgin points and we are booking through Virgin Atlantic's website, it is actually technically a Delta flight, and the cash price for that flight is $179, which makes this a 1.57 cent per point value redemption. Although I gave you a very small sample size, you usually do get higher cent per point value on first class or business class flights as opposed to redeeming your points for economy flights. All of these flight examples I looked up and found relatively quickly, but if you were to look harder and spend a little bit more time, I'm sure you could find more flights with higher redemption values. Personally, I like to aim for at least 2 cents per point on my flights point redemptions with Amex points. I have settled sometimes for a 1.5 or a 1.3 cent per point flight, but usually I try to strive for over 2 cents per point. Switching things up, if you want to use your Amex membership reward points for hotel redemptions, I have found a handful of good availability for you to choose from to get solid value for a hotel redemption. For Hilton hotels, hotels, I was looking at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, which had room rates of 150,000 Hilton points per night. As you can see here, there was actually quite a lot of availability for January and February 2026. The going cash price for the night was over $1,000. With the taxes and fees, it would have been around $1,200. Using 150,000 Hilton points and $1,200 cash price, that cent per point value would be 0.8 cents per point. But American Express points actually transfer to Hilton points at a 1-to-2 ratio. That means for every 1 Amex point, you get 2 Hilton points. So in reality, we only need 75,000 American Express points to get 150,000 Hilton points. So instead, by using 75,000 Amex points, the real cent per point value we get is 1.58. If you don't want to stay in the Waldorf Astoria, I found a redemption for the Hilton Garden Inn in New York City with a going cash rate of $195, including taxes and fees, or 46,000 Hilton points. We are only using 23,000 American Express points, so we get a cent per point ratio of 0.85. To finish off my examples, I found a couple options from Marriott since they are also a travel transfer partner with American Express. First, let's start with a higher end property, which is the St. Regis, New York, that has a cash price for 1 night, including taxes and fees, of $1,200. But I found award availability for 94,000 Marriott points and $61 in taxes and fees, which gives us a cent per point value of 1.19. Unfortunately for Marriott, the transfer ratio from Amex is just 1-to-1. So for every 1 Amex point, we just get 1 Marriott point. To keep things consistent, I also found a lower tier option, which is the Courtyard in New York City that has a cash price of $497 for a 1-night stay, but you could use 47,000 Amex points and a few bucks in taxes and fees instead, which will give you a 1.05 cent per point ratio. Just like what we saw with using points to transfer them to airlines for first class or business class seats flight purchases, you will also see a higher cent per point value when you transfer your Amex points for hotel purchases at nicer hotels. The main takeaway here is that some Amex redemption options clearly give you more objective value than others. For example, transferring your points to travel partners can often get you way more out of each point than using them for statement credits or gift cards. But that doesn't always mean it's the best option or even the most valuable option for you. If you don't have the time or the patience to hunt down award flights or first class availability or hotel availability, then booking directly through the Amex Travel portal might be the better call. It's all about what works for you and your lifestyle and your goals. Now that you've seen all the different ways you could redeem Amex points, you've got the full picture and you could choose what makes the most sense for your next redemption. Maybe you like to use your Amex points for statement credit or cash back or gift cards. That's great as long as you're using your Amex points for the most valuable redemption option for you. And if you also collect Chase points, I've got another video here that walks you through how to get the most value out of those too. You could check it out right here, or if you're in the mood for something else, this other video might be just what you need. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Shoots.